Hi, my name is Kimberly. Welcome to my live stream. And today I'm just continuing a series that I started, and it's on setting healthy boundaries. Now, today I do want to share, without notes and just candidly, why I focus so much of what I talk about and what I come to you all with, why I focus so much on setting boundaries. So I have pieces of my story that I've already shared, but I'm going to share it because some people may be new, and I have not just flat out talked on here on YouTube or any other platform. Normally, I'll pre-record my video, and so today I'm going to share how I got here and why I'm so passionate about setting boundaries. So I have explained before, I am an adoptee and I am in reunion, as well as I have relocated. It's been almost 10 years from where I was born and raised to where I live now, which is the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And so, how this all came to be for me was that I had been adopted and separated from my biological family for most of my life, which was from the time I was 3, permanently adopted, until when I turned 30 is when I reconnected with my family. And that is important because often there's this thing in the adoptee community, we talk about this a lot, just the impact, right, that it has on your self-esteem, on who you are, on how you show up in the world. But it wasn't something that I had discussed outside of these closed groups. And that is just the impact that reconnecting with my birth family had on me. It was good, don't get me wrong, but it was also very overwhelming. It was also a lot to just process because for 3 decades I did not know anything about where I had originally been born, where I had come from. I had a little bit of information, non-identifying information in my records. But so when I reconnected with my birth family, when I met them, my biological mother had already passed away. So my birth mother was already deceased. And so the information that I got came from her sisters and my own siblings from my mom and just my greater family. And what that did was sent me into an existential crisis around my identity. So for 3 decades, I'm one person. In a blink of an eye, I reconnect with my birth family. And so that ended up having me, I don't know how to describe it really well, but just having to reassess who I thought I was, having to understand myself in a whole new context, positioned in a family that I had just met, but whose DNA I have, whose traits and characteristics I share, just learning so much about myself, right? Which I will say I took my time to do. I was very, very, very careful in how I approached going through all of this information because growing up, my adopted father had always told me I should find my family, but he had always said, make sure that I was situated in my own life so that whatever I found out would not rock my world to the degree that it knocked me off of my own course. And so, having his advice echo in my ear, in my mind, in my heart, I really did take my time, but it was an extremely hard process. I read a lot of books. I joined private communities, which I'm also a fan of, right? Because depending on what you're dealing with, sometimes you can't talk about it with the people who have always known you. You have to connect to a group or a community that understands the context that you're in, right? It can be a book. I've read several books. I read books by adoptees, books about adoptees, Facebook groups. I joined an in person group in Birmingham. And so all of these things helped me, but it didn't take away from the impact that this was having on my identity. So I reconnect with my birth family. And then 1 year later, my husband and I left where we were from and relocated to another state 13 hours away. So As you can imagine, for me, I was grateful that I had found my family. It had felt like for me, for the first time in my life, my roots knew where they were, and that, like, yeah, we left, but I was rooted in a place, in a family, in a dynamic, right? In my identity. However, moving from where I was from to a larger area, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, was a big step. And so it was just my husband and I. I didn't know a soul. I knew no one. My husband, he connected with his work family because we relocated for his job. But for me, I didn't know a soul. So I did what I normally do. I went to a few churches in the network where I had like served and what I knew, and joined a couple of small groups. And that eased the transition for a little bit. And it helped me to just know a few people, but I had absolutely no one. At the same time, I moved. It was the beginning of 2015. And then I started a program, a really, really hard program, a master's in divinity. My master's in divinity is in interdisciplinary studies. And so all of these major transitions in a place that I was unfamiliar with were so hard. And what I found is that I was struggling with my voice. And by that, I mean, I was struggling to speak up, to connect with what I wanted. I didn't even know what I wanted fully. I knew some aspects of what I wanted to seek out, what I wanted to develop, what I wanted to work on. But overall, it was like a total identity existential meltdown where I had to get to know who I was biologically, birthed, situated, and rooted in my family. And then I had to figure out who I was navigating in this different place. And y'all, let me tell you, it was so hard. It was extremely hard. Like did not I didn't give up because I'm not like a give up type person, but I was extremely overwhelmed. So I started with where we got an apartment, and so I just started like around that area, going to different stores. Of course, I found a Target. I found places I was familiar with, and I just would start my routine from there. But again, I had moved with my husband. We had sold our home, packed all of our stuff. Our stuff was in storage. My stuff from my house literally was in storage for like 5 years until we bought a home 4 years ago. And so that was a very interesting part of my journey, a much needed part of our journey, because with this transition came a lot of travel. My husband traveled so much that he earned a companion pass. And so I was able to fly and go with him. I was full time in school. I've shared about that. That also really, really bugged me at the time because I had people asking me if I was going to finally do something with myself and with my life. Because, of course, I had just finished school, I had finished my second bachelor's. And so going into a master's in divinity to me felt like I was being sidetracked again, but it was all a part of my journey. And that is why I talk so much about boundaries. Even for people who have known you all your life, you have to have a boundary because sometimes they can be wrong about what they think you should be doing. They can be misjudging you, they can misunderstand your path. You have to have enough boundaries, enough strength and resiliency that even the people who have always known you, if your path is what you know it's supposed to be, you have to be able to respectfully put up a boundary there and continue along your path. Looking back, I didn't necessarily place a boundary there, but I continued on my path. Now, that's just me. I've always been like that. That's just like my personality. So people can offer their opinions. I still do what I do. It's just like that for me. That's something that I've always done. But the older I got, I found it harder, right? And I found the need for like actual boundaries. Like, for example, yeah, this is my path. I don't want to speak about that anymore right now, et cetera, whatever whatever you think you need to say. Respectful, of course, but firm so that people understand, no, I'm going this way. You don't have to like it, co-sign with it, or agree on it. And so, anyway, I continued, even though I was not sure about where it would lead. And so, the program that I was in for the divinity degree was intense. It was so intense. It was hard. It was the hardest degree, the hardest, one of the hardest things I had ever studied because it was so in depth. Of course, it's a divinity degree, it's a very in depth program. So, again, I was going through that program in a new area where I didn't know a soul. I had no connections, nobody I had grown up with. It was just my husband and I. He worked and traveled a lot. Sometimes I would go with him because I could, and sometimes I wouldn't so that I could just focus. And so, moving forward from that point, I finished. I started looking for like a side job or like a part-time, full-time job. I started contracting with someone that I know, and then I started contracting here in the area that I'm in, but that was just like kind of odds and ends. And then I got into a PhD program. I've always wanted to study. I was always looking for a program that focused primarily on women. So I found a women's spirituality program. And so I started that process, more school. Again, I've talked about this previously. That for me felt like I was not starting my life. It felt like I was just in school for school's sake, but that's not the case. This was the next level of deep development that I needed, and I'm still in that program. I am at the dissertation proposal phase, and so I'll be working on my dissertation soon, fingers crossed. But the program aligned with where I was supposed to be. Again, you have to have enough boundaries in your life to know your own path. This is where self-belief comes in. This is where trusting your own decisions comes in. And it's not always easy, especially when people that you have known your whole life, maybe, well, why are you doing that? What are you going to do with that? A lot of questions. And some people's paths are clearer, right? Some people, they know from the time they're two that they're going to be a lawyer, a singer. They know they're a chef. For some other people, depending on your path, you may have one or two or three different things that you end up doing, or it doesn't totally become clear to you till much later in life. And that's also okay. And so, again, I don't know if I've shared this personality type on the Myers Briggs personality is ENFP. And I had to do a deep dive into that personality type, which is more on the imaginative spectrum, which is more about generating ideas. However, I did learn how to temper that because when I was younger, I served in the military. And so that basic training, that discipline that I got from just serving in the military helped me, right, to balance out my more imaginative side. So meeting goals, deadlines, things of that nature is something that I had a lot of practice and training with. And so again, it kind of balanced me out. However, the part of me that shows up the most is probably my more imaginative, fun side, right? Doesn't mean I don't have the discipline, but what I do enjoy is creation, the process of just flow. So, anyway, again, back to the boundaries. And this is why I am very big on developing self belief and having healthy boundaries in place. What it I'm not saying that it doesn't mean that you don't need to listen to wisdom. However, oftentimes wisdom can be people just kind of hating on you, but disguising it as wisdom and advice they need to give you. Sometimes it can be people feel triggered by you. They're afraid. They don't know what they would do if they were you. And they'll sometimes put that on you. And you have to, as my father would say, eat the meat and leave the bones. In other words, take what's good and leave what's not good on the plate. That takes skill. That takes self belief. That takes confidence, you guys. That takes really building up yourself to know who you are and what your goal and your mission is. That just takes a deep understanding on your own path, on your own journey, and in your own wisdom. Now, there's something different for everyone. Some people have that from the time that they're little and they don't need help with it. And some people have it and then life circumstances kind of damages it, kind of takes it away, gives you a run for your money, makes you doubt yourself. And once you start doubting yourself, you could just go into a spiral. I know for me personally, having any kind of doubt would send me into like, man, is any of this the right thing? And for that, I would pray. For that, I would seek out the advice of a couple very close friends who I knew would give me advice not based on their own understanding or their path, but based on mine. That would be people who don't have jealousy issues, who are very firm and like secure in their own identity. So they don't see the need to kind of pull you down the sides. Those kind of people. Those people are very few and very far in between. So if you have any in your life, in your world, hold on to them. Thank them for being there for you. It's a couple of people. I don't want to drop names, but I really appreciate you. I could tear up now. I wouldn't even have stepped out to start anything if they weren't always like, that's your path, walk your path, right? And so, again, I just wanted to come on and continue sharing about healthy boundaries. So, ways you can practice, just a couple of ways you can practice healthy boundaries. I always like to say is by having a set time for yourself on a daily basis. This set time can be 5 minutes, it can be an hour, it can be 2 hours. Everyone is at a different place in their life. So everyone can allot a different amount of time. The amount of time is not what's important, though. What's really important is that you do this daily for yourself. It could be a cup of coffee and a quick doodle in a notebook. It could be a cup of coffee and you listen to something. I recommend something uplifting. Of course, that varies from person to person too. But the whole point is that you consistently carve out that time for yourself. Well, what does that have to do with boundaries? That means you'll have to have a boundary in place that says, this is this time for me to do this, and nothing and no one can get in the way of that. And so that's a small thing that you can start practicing. You can set a timer. You can put it in on your calendar. And when you put it on your calendar, it can just show you as busy. If you have like Calendly or any kind of system as a business owner or as an entrepreneur where people book with you, block that time out. Don't have that time open because you're afraid to miss money. Have that time blocked as a meeting for you with you, which is important, right? So that's a one way you can do it. It could be at the beginning of the day, the middle, the end. Everyone is different and everyone's schedule is different. I would suggest the beginning of the day because you do not know what the day is going to bring you, right? Like you can start off, the day can be sunshine and it can be rainbows. And then you can get to like 2 o'clock in the afternoon and it could be like, I don't know, a tornado. It could be very crazy. Things could be chaotic because you have other people in your world. If you have children, if you have a significant other, if you work, whatever it is, someone could have an emergency that you may have to tend to. And so the time you may have carved out for later could get gobbled up. So I say do it first thing in the morning as soon as you wake up. Set a timer for yourself to wake up 5 or 10 minutes earlier if you have to. Already have things prepped. That's one way I suggest it. So for example, if you're a tea drinker early when you first wake up, have the tea kettle there, your cup, have your little stuff already set up the night before so you can wake up and slide into the room and to the kitchen and make your tea or your coffee if you're a coffee drinker. Whatever it is that you like to do. If you don't want anything but a glass of water, have that water ready. Just whatever you need to get your day started and to ensure that you have a boundary around that time is what you're supposed to do. So again, this was my continuation. I just wanted to get into how I started talking about boundaries. Having boundaries became so important for me to finish the degrees I started, for me to continue on my path, no matter how it looked, no matter who liked it or co-signs on it. this became very important for me. And so I just want to share that with you all. Definitely, if you want a way to set some boundaries, consider getting my journal. You can get it on Amazon. I think the link is in the bio. I drop it in the comments. You have 60 prompts. This is a great way to end the year and start the year, where you just set those 5 to 10 minutes aside to answer this question. And it's a good way to start learning how to put those boundaries in place if you don't already have them in place. And so again, I'm Kimberly, and I appreciate you, and I will continue this series about boundaries on the next live stream.